Thank you so much for coming to my presentation about my deck, Cadogan's Trip to Azkaban. This will explain my list, the cards I used, and how I won. So, the most important thing to do when it comes to deck building is choosing your starting character. I, for this tournament, picked Hermione S.P.E.W Founder. She says, when she is my starting character, I can search my deck for any non-Witch or Wizard character and put it instantly into play. That's great, because it can make any non-Witch or Wizard character that we usually couldn't start with, essentially our starting character. And for this effect, to search out a non-Witch or Wizard character, I picked Sir Cadogan. And Sir Cadogan is super duper strong, because he says, once during each of my turns, whenever I play a card of even power cost, I get to draw a card and then play a lesson from my hand into play. So that's super good, because playing a card of even power cost is pretty easy. All we have to do is play cards that have 2 power cost, 4 power cost, 6 power cost, etc. And remember to trigger this effect every single turn. Drawing a card and playing a lesson down is super duper strong. It heals our hand and ramps us super quickly. One thing to note is that because we're using Hermione S.P.E.W Founder, Cadogan can be targeted by removal, because Hermione is technically our starting character, and she's only searching and playing Sir Cadogan. So if Sir Cadogan gets removed, that can be a bit of a problem, but most of the best removal in the game does not target characters. Depulso can't hit characters. Stairs to Slides can't hit Sir Cadogan because they got up before they can play Stairs to Slides at the start of the game. So most of the most played removal does not hit Sir Cadogan, and so that's not that bad. So, we're playing a lot of cheap, even powered cost to trigger Cadogan's effect turn 2. So we're playing 4 copies of the Charms book and 4 copies of the 2-cost Transfiguration book. Big Transfiguration, playing 4 of each. They both do the exact same thing. They provide 1 power, and I can spend an action to discard them and draw 3 cards later. That's great, because by playing them, we will get a power and play from the book, and then trigger Cadogan to draw a card and play another lesson. So if we play 2 lessons turn 1, then play a book turn 2, get a lesson down from Cadogan, and then play another lesson from hand for a second action, that's going to us with 5 power by turn 2. The other cheap-costed card we play in this deck is Floo Powder. It's a 2-costed Transfiguration spell that, when played, searches our deck for any location and puts it right into our hand. And that's great, because we can use that to boost our consistency to find Azkaban and trigger Cadogan. So it helps us for consistency, and it lets us trigger Cadogan every single turn. That's fantastic. Make sure, if you're playing this deck, make sure your opening hand has a way that can trigger Cadogan turn 2. That's the most important thing, because Cadogan will ramp you and draw you. That's what you really want to do. Because after this, the card that we want to play is Azkaban. Now, Azkaban is one of the best cards in the whole game. It is super good, and it is what we're playing our whole deck around. Azkaban is a 6-costed dark location that, when played, we can choose any non-lesson card type, and as long as Azkaban's in play, cards of that type cost 1 more action to play. So, if we played Azkaban and chose spells, spells would cost 2 actions to play instead of 1. If we chose creatures, creatures would cost 2 actions instead of 1. If we chose characters, characters would cost 3 actions to play instead of 2. So we can pick whatever card type our opponent is basing their deck around, and just slap Azkaban down, and just stop them from playing that card type. And just slow them down super bad. If they're playing Draco and they have a lot of items, we can Azkaban naming items, and now every time they're playing items, that forced to spend almost a whole turn just playing that single item. If they're playing a creatures deck, we can just Azkaban name creatures, and the first, whenever they want to play a creature, they have to spend their whole turn on that one card. This is such a brutal effect because our deck doesn't play that many of any one card type, so whatever card type we're naming for our opponent, we don't really care about. We don't play that many spells, we don't play any creatures, we don't play, that many items. We can really be flexible with what card type we name, and make it really only hurt our opponent. Another great thing about Azkaban is that when we name spells, because all of the location removal is in spells, you have to spend 2 actions if they want to be able to remove Azkaban with a Depulso. So even if even if we play Azkaban and name spells and they instantly Depulso it, they're still spending 2 actions on the Depulso, and that's putting us up an advantage. So Azkaban can protect itself from removal, which is fantastic. But Azkaban gets even better when we combine it with a card called Faux Glass. Faux Glass is fantastic, okay? Because essentially what it does is it's a 5-cost Transfiguration item that, when it's in play, as long as we only spend 1 action during our turn, our opponent only gets 1 action. It basically sets both players to 1 action. And that is fantastic, okay? It's going to slow our opponent down even more, but what makes this so good of Azkaban is that if we say Azkaban name creatures, then play Faux Glass, because Faux Glass is restricting both players to 1 action every turn, and Azkaban's making creatures cost 2 actions, we can just stop our opponent from playing creatures. This goes for any card type we name of Azkaban. With Faux Glass, we can just prevent our opponent from playing that card type altogether. And if, that card type has their win con, if they're trying to win off items, trying to win off creatures, we can just stop them from playing their win con at all. Decks that play a lot of a single card type, like creature decks, like spell-based decks, like item decks, suffer immensely into this. And we can just shut down whole decks with this. It's fantastic. And if we name spells of Azkaban and shut off spells of Faux Glass, we can stop them from playing removal at all. So they can't even remove our control combo. It's so great. Now, we have these great defensive pieces. Faux Glass and Azkaban really slowed the game down, and Cadogan gets us to that number. Hopefully we're playing Azkaban turn 3, and hopefully we're following up with Faux Glass afterwards. But we know where to win. And our win condition is Campfire Stories. We play 4 copies of Campfire Stories, and it's a bit complicated, but it has 2 effects. The first thing is that when you play it, you can discard any number of cards from your hand, and it costs 1 less power to play for each card you discard. So it costs 8, but if we discard 3 cards when you play it, it will cost 5 power. That goes for any number of cards we discard. And then, at the start of a turn, if you have it in play, it does an effect based on the number of cards we have in our hand. So if we have less than 5 cards, so 4 and below, we draw a card at the start of our turn. If we have at least 5 cards, we do 3 damage at the start of our turn. And if we have at least 8 cards, we do 5 damage at the start of our turn. And we're really aiming to get to that 8 card threshold so we can start doing 5 damage every single turn while we defend ourselves with our big pillar fort of Azkaban and Faux Glass. We also play Campfire Stories is really the main win con, but it can be a bit slow, especially because we're, limiting everyone to 1 action every single turn with Faux Glass. Doing 5 damage every single turn is a bit slow for a win con, and Campfire Stories needs a lot of setup. So to combine that with, we're playing Firewhisky. We're playing 2 copies of Firewhisky. It is a 5-cost potions item that during your turn you can discard a potions card from play or from your hand to either do 4 damage to your opponent or heal or put 4 cards from your discard pile and back into the bottom of your deck. That's our third effect, but we never use that. Really, we're doing the Firewhisky for more damage. We're going to want to spend our 1 action under Faux Glass every single turn to discard a potions from our hand to do 4 damage. And that combined with Campfire Stories, if we have it set up, we'll start doing upwards to 9 damage every turn. 5 from Campfire Stories, and then 4 from the Firewhisky. And Firewhisky also can heal us if we're, losing a race against a creature deck, or if you're doing constant damage, shuffling back a couple cards can really help us, have more sustainability. I also like to recycle some Azkabans, any key cards that, might have gotten life decked, might have gotten discarded from taking damage. And one more last thing about Firewhisky, you can Firewhisky as many times per turn. Firewhisky is not a once per turn effect, so even though for most of the game we want to keep both players to one action with Foglass, if our opponent has, 8 cards in deck, we can use Firewhisky twice in one turn, discarding 2 potions to do 8 damage all at once. So it gives us a little bit extra push at the end of the game. So next, we have a win con, we have our control pieces, Cadogan's vamping us and drawing us, but we need removal. Sometimes our opponent will get powerful cards out that we need to answer. And we play 2 removal cards. We play Depulso, the best card in the game. It's a 4-cost spell, shuffles back choose a card in the field with a power cost, and then it sends it back to the bottom of the player's deck. So if our opponent has a creature out, we can just Depulso it, send it to the bottom of the deck. If they have really any card, we can just play Depulso and just remove it. It hits almost every single card type besides characters and adventures, which are the 2 very niche card types. Adventures aren't very good, and characters aren't super played outside of character decks. And so, besides that, Depulso can remove anything. It's super cheap. It even triggers Cadogan, which is nice. So just all around, Swiss Army knife removal. And then Drawing the Sword is a 6-cost spell. It does. We can only play it if we have a Gryffindor character in play. Thankfully, Cadogan and S.P.E.W are Gryffindor characters. And when we play it, we do 6 damage anyway to our opponent's creatures. So if they have, 3 creatures with 2 health out, we could do 2 damage to each of those creatures and kill them all. If they have 6 1-health creatures, we can do 1 damage to all of them and kill them all. 6 damage kills almost every single good creature in the game. All the good creatures have very low health. Sandstone Gargoyle, Baby Alchemantula, Biting Gnome, Pixie. They all have super low health, even bigger creatures, like Welsh Green, like Marble Gargoyle, like Demonstration Spider, all have really small health and can be killed with one Drawing the Sword. Drawing the Sword just destroys creature decks, and especially when opponents play a lot of, little creatures and play into Drawing the Sword, we can just wipe the whole board, and once we have Azkaban out naming creatures, it's super hard for them to get those creatures back on play, being forced to, spend 2 actions to play those creatures on Azkaban, and we're able to remove them. It's super brutal. So other cards. We play 2 copies of Borrowed Tent. It's a 4-cost item that, when played, makes our cards cost 1 less power on a turn, and then we can sacrifice it for an action to search the deck for any item. And it provides a power base, which is great. Triggers Cadogan, provides a power, can help us ramp up to Azkaban on turn 3. But it also lets us search our deck for Foglass, the main item we're playing. Sometimes we can't find Foglass as easily as Azkaban, and so this is a good way to increase our consistency. And then we play 2 copies of 12 using Azkaban. And this card's fantastic. Let me talk about this card. It's so good. It is a little complicated, but it's a 4-cost potions event that whenever we take damage, we prevent 2 of it. And once 12 using Azkaban has prevented in total 12 damage, it provides 2 power instead of preventing damage. That's a kind of a lot to process, but essentially it acts as like a wall whenever we take damage. So if a opponent is has a couple creatures out there doing bits of 1 damage, Azkaban, 12 years in Azkaban will block each individual little bit of damage. So if they have 3 baby Aculas doing 1 damage each, 12 years in Azkaban will block all that damage. This is super good against creature decks that do lots of bits of chip damage, and it stops a lot of damage very easily. And finding 2 power after stops in total 12 damage, that 2 power is kind of great. This triggers Cadogan by costing 4. you know, prevents us from losing health in early game, provides extra power late game. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's so cheap. It's prevents so much damage in total. It really lets us draw out the game so we can win off our Campfire Stories, so we can win off our Firewhisky. The sideboard. Sideboard's pretty uninteresting. We play 3 Unplottable if our opponent's playing a deck with a lot of locations, and they're able to use to bump Azkaban to, replace it. Unplottable, we just slap it down, stop them from playing locations altogether, and force them to play under Azkaban. Also protects our Azkaban from removal, which is great. So we play that into decks based on locations. More 12 years in Drawing the Sword. These 12 years in Azkaban and Drawing the Sword are both really good into creature decks. So we play 2 of each of those cards in our sideboard to throw in case we face any creature decks. Helps us really swing that matchup into our favor. Through the Arch is like one of the best cards in the game. I hate playing this card, but it's an adventure that stops our opponent from playing spells, and to solve it, they have to skip 4 actions in total. That is, super busted. If our opponent is playing a deck that relies on spells for a combo, or is focused on spells, we slap this down for 2 actions, and because all of the adventure removal, all the removal in general is in spells, and 12 through the Arch prevents them from playing spells, they can't remove through the Arch, and they're forced to solve by skipping 4 actions, which is essentially skipping 2 turns. So we spend a turn to play this, and they have to spend 2 turns to answer it. That is absolutely brutal. If we can just slap down through the Arches again and again against spell decks, we're going to beat them super easily. This card's cracked. Ban this card. But it won me the finals, so maybe don't ban it. And then Omnioculars, 4-cost item. Whenever opponent takes a 3rd action, we draw a card and invent that action, and it provides a power. It's really here to beat some of the best characters. A lot of the best characters give you extra actions. Godric, Gryffindor, Draco Malfoy, Slytherin, and Seamus are both some of the best characters in the whole game, and Omnioculars is one of the few ways to really counter them and put them on the back foot, and so Omnioculars will slow them down, and yeah. Pros and cons and final thoughts. The deck ramps super fast. Cadogan lets you draw consistently. Ramping out extra lessons lets us get Azkaban down as early as hopefully turn 3. Extra draw helps us, find our Azkaban, find our Foglass. Azkaban punishes decks made of mostly 1 card type. A lot of decks are reliant on 1 card type. Draco Malfoy, Slytherin on items. Creature decks focus on creatures. Marauders focused on events. Spell-based decks. Lynch, Irish Seeker are reliant on spells. Those kind of decks that majority of their deck is one card type, Azkaban shuts them down. It is absolutely brutal. They're forced to basically cut the turn in half to play the cards, to play their deck, to play the cards their deck is built around. It's super strong against those kind of decks. And, a lot of decks focus on 1 card type, so, it plays really well. It plays really well into the field. And once you have Azkaban and Foglass out, it's super hard to remove. Especially if you name spells, and with Azkaban and Foglass stop them from playing spells altogether. They can't play any removal spells. They can only answer 1 of these. It's just, Azkaban and Foglass protect each other and prevent them from being removed as long as we're naming spells, which we will commonly do so. Cons. Now, the deck sets up super fast and is quite consistent, but wins very slowly. Campfire Stories needs a lot of setup. We need to have at least 8 cards in hand to start doing 5 damage. And spend an action to play it. And setting a Firewhisky requires an action to be played, and then we have to spend another action to discard our potions from our hand and start doing 4 damage. our win cons take a lot of setup. They're pretty action hungry, they're pretty setup hungry, and so it makes us pretty slow. And even then, once we're fully set up, we're only doing at most 9 damage a turn, which really isn't that much. So yeah, we're pretty slow. Decks that use cards that do passive damage every single turn is really difficult for us. What I mean by like passive damage, like cards that do damage every single turn, like creatures do damage every single turn, like Campfire Stories, like Confronting Black. If they're able to set up, creatures or Campfire Stories, those cards that stay on the board and do damage every single turn before we get out Azkaban and before we start putting on a lock, we can get outraced by them, It doesn't matter if we have our full glass Azkaban lockout, if they have, 3 Sandstorm Gargoyles that are doing 9 damage every single turn. We're not going to beat them in the race. And last con, Cadogan can be hit with removal. This can be pretty problematic if our opponent is teching for S.P.E.W decks. Delay of the Death Eaters is the main tech, I would say. If our Cadogan gets removed early, that can kind of suck. That can definitely hurt us. If it gets bounced, if it gets, sent back to deck. Even though Cadogan dodges the most plate removal, Stairs to Slides and Depulso, there are all plenty of removal cards that can still hit it. And the earlier Cadogan gets removed, the worse it feels for us. Because that removes our consistency, that removes our ramp. It kind of sucks. So we're hoping Cadogan doesn't get removed. Thank you guys for listening. I'm sorry about the bad mic quality. I'm going to get a new one. But just remember to subscribe, like, and check out the Harry Potter TCG Revival podcast. Those guys have a lot of good insight into the design of the game, into the making of it, and, it's a great other resource. Check out the description for the Harry Potter TCG Discord. Look at Accio for a full card list. And yeah, I'm super excited to play with you guys, and have a good rest of your day.